So today we're going to be talking about formatting in 4.3 like a pro. I've presented this information before in 4.2 and some things have changed with the changing of the UI in 4.3. So we wanted to go over that and show you how to do formatting in a faster, more efficient way so that you can get your reports in front of people faster. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about here is during a Harvard University study, neuroscientists revealed that we make 11 decisions about someone in just 7 seconds of meeting them. And the same thing applies to reports. So that's why I wanted to mention this. First impressions really matter. If we show someone a report and things are not lined up, things don't look great, that's an impression that we have left already, that we're not presenting things in a orderly fashion. Things aren't lined up, things don't look quite right. And so in this session, I really want to talk about what we can do to make our reports look nicer, faster. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. All right, here's that same report, only with things lined up and aligned vertically, horizontally, and everything is much easier to read and looks much more presentable. All right, so one of the first things I want to talk about is some formatting shortcuts and how can we do this faster. If we have a table like this where we want to auto-fit, say, all the columns at once, we can do that by unchecking this auto-fit width to column or checking that on. So let me show a demonstration of that. Here we go. So here I have a table. There are several columns that the customer, the state, the product, and the revenue, they're not fitting. But let's say I really just want to fit everything in here. I can select my first column here, and with my shift key, select the last column so that they're all selected there. And then on my formatting, my properties window here, because remember in 4.3, we have these two panels here, our objects panel here and our properties panel here. All the formatting we're going to do with our properties panel here and on this format paintbrush icon here. All right, so if I select that and then go to the layout options here, I can click on the auto fit, and now all my columns have the auto fit setting on there at once. So that's a quick way to do that. One of the great additions, these panels, one of the things I really like about them is that we can do our formatting and keep this window open. It's right there. We can see our table at the same time. So any changes I do with the formatting here, I can immediately see the results here in my table. In 4.2, you know how we right click to format the table or format a column, and that formatting window overlaps our table, and it's often hard to see the effects of our changes right away without closing the window. And then oftentimes we'll see, oh, it's not quite what I want, so you have to open the window again and make the adjustment. So that's one of the things I love about this new panel here, that we can make all these formatting changes right here and see the effects of the changes immediately. I love that about 4.3. All right, let's see what else we're going to talk about here. All right, let me get back to my window here. There we go. All right. Control plus, using your control key, we can apply the same formatting to the columns at once. So in this table example here, I have 3 columns that all need the thousands separator in there. And I could select all 3 columns at once and apply that rather than applying the format individually. Okay, so I have an example of that in here as well. All right, on this tab here. In this case, I want to format my revenue and average revenue at the same time. So I can select both columns and then right click and format display and change the formatting to currency with no decimals. In this case is what I want. Okay. So now they both have that formatting in there. Likewise, I could select these 3 columns and center the formatting on there. In my format options here, I'll go to my format paintbrush and then the text settings and center the text in there and apply that to all 3 columns at once. Okay, so remember to use your control key and do the formatting to multiple columns at the same time. And that allows you to save some time instead of formatting individually. Okay. Now, the format painter. This is very cool. So in 4.2, we had that format paintbrush in the toolbar at the top. And if you double click on it, you could apply that formatting on multiple columns at once. I wanted to show you how you can do that here as well.
Just quickly, Roxanne, before you get into that, a question came up with the formatting of the currency. Is there a way to get all the dollar signs to align?
Yes. Well, of course, depending on the length of your values in here, if you want them to align left, you could do a left align to get them like that. Otherwise, it depends on the length of the numbers in here. Okay.
Okay. Is that like a currency? Is there a currency setting to do that as well?
There is a currency. So if I format, I'm going to format this right now real quick. I'll go to format display and select currency. And there's not an option to say align them here.
Right.
I'm adding the dollar sign here with no decimals. And now what I'm going to do is apply this formatting to the next column with this copy format. And I'll apply it to this column. Now, in this case, because we have, this is only 3 values and this is 5 values with a comma in there, they're not going to be aligned. If I left align them, that does give you the dollar signs lined up. But of course, I don't think usually they don't want them like that.
Right.
So
I was just thinking, because I know I can do it in Excel.
well, it always depends on the number of values that you have in here. I can definitely center align them, and it kind of looks better that way. But if I have small numbers like this with large numbers, they're never going to be lined up perfectly.
Yes. April just asked, can you lock the size of the width or the width size of the table?
Lock the size of the width. Not sure what you mean by that. For example, what would that do to this 81 if I locked the size of that width? I could say the width of this column is only a certain width. Yes, I could do that if that's what I want. The column width to be the same as this. Yeah, I can definitely do that on the formatting tab.
Yeah, okay. I think that's what she meant. Yeah.
Okay, so I would specify that here on the layout tab. Okay.
Right. Thanks.
All right. And then one other thing on that copy format. So on this column here, I'm going to center align that. And then the copy all format. So this is different in 4.3. This middle option here that says format painter. You see when I hover over it, the text there says copy and apply format to several objects. The first one just copies it to one. The second one copies it to several. So if I choose that second one, now notice this, that text there said press escape to get out of this. So now I can apply that centering to this column and this column and this column. And now when I'm done, I hit my escape key and that goes away. Okay, so that's a nice way to apply formatting on one at a time on the columns there with the same format. Okay, so that's a handy feature as well in 4.3. I really like that. Copy all the format. All right, let me switch back to my PowerPoint. All right, another good thing to be aware of is knowing the default behavior of certain things in Web Intelligence. For example, your report title, these cells all look the same, like they have an underline. Actually, the report title is an underline, and your blank cell or your predefined cells are actually borders. So knowing that, if I go back to my report here, and this is a report title, picking up the name of my report tab here. That's an underline here, but you see if I switch to my prompt or my predefined cell to get the document name, that's not an underline. The borders are handled under the appearance tab, and I would select no border to remove that underlining there for those cells. Okay, so just being aware of the report title is going to be an underline. And if I want to get rid of that, go to your underlining on the text tab rather than the border tab. Okay. All right. We do recommend using these predefined cells, for example, your document name, your last refresh date, to save time. So here I have the last refresh date, which we add up here from our insert cell. So I have to go on my formula, on my toolbar here. I'll use the drop down here and select last refresh date. And when I click on that and drop it on my report, oh, there's my header. I get that in there, same as this. And then I could add some text around that if I wanted to. Say last refresh. And then a plus sign to concatenate it to the rest of the formula. All right, so do take advantage of that. Also, this report, if I refresh it, you'll notice I have a prompt for the order year here of 2018. So that I would want to use my prompt input, my prompt predefined formula here. If I drop that on here, now that shows my 2018, and I could use this in the title of my report. Also by adding orders for and a plus sign. That way I don't have to type out this formula, which is very picky. It wants to have an exact replica of what your prompt was. We used to have to do that. Now that they gave us that predefined formula, it makes it so much easier to use a dynamic title in your report to capture the results of your prompt. Okay. And it works for multiple years as well. If I add another year in here and select run, it just separates them with a semicolon in there. Okay. So make sure to take advantage of these. I'm going to talk about some of the others in a little bit, but take advantage of these predefined formulas whenever you can. All right. Display your report before exporting. So always a good idea to see how is that report going to look before you export it, or say perhaps before you schedule the report to be delivered to someone, let's say as a PDF. If right now I displayed this report, right now this is not page layout mode, and this display toggles on the page layout mode, I would see that it's definitely getting cut off. They don't see my chart. So I would want to change the formatting on here to format my page to be perhaps landscape, and then also maybe change it to letter size. And then also, even still, it probably wouldn't fit, even specifying landscape. My chart is still getting cut off. So I could change the scaling to say, I really want it to fit on 1 page wide. So I can add 1 page wide on here. And now my table and my chart both fit on here. I could adjust the margins on here if I want as well. And of course, this chart doesn't really need a legend on here, and that would help clean that up as well. So things like that, think about before you schedule the report to be exported, especially as PDF, as things can tend to be cut off. Okay, so be aware of it before you export. All right. Also, be aware if you're exporting to Excel, use your relative positioning to eliminate any unwanted columns. In this example here, this would be an example of a report that had sections on the report. And notice how you get all these extra rows in here that you probably don't want in Excel, and these little skinny rows in here that tend to be very annoying. So, oops, sorry. I scrolled too fast.
Quick question there, Roxanne.
Yes.
In 4.3, can you add conditional formatting to more than 1 column at a time instead of 1 by 1?
No, you can't. I am going to talk about conditional formatting in a moment, but yeah, that would be nice. But
and for the hiding, can you hide more than 1 column at a time? And if you want to unhide some columns, but not all columns, can you do that in 4.3?
Well, let's test that out. Okay. So let's say I want to hide these 3 columns. Right click. No, we don't have the hide in there. I believe the hide is still a column by column option on here. There's my hide. Let me double check that. Yeah, I didn't miss it. All right, but I do want to hide more than 1 column here to see if I hide. All right, and now if I ask for an unhide, no, I'm gonna have to do it at the show all hidden objects. Okay, so it doesn't let you choose individual columns to unhide. You have to hide them individually. And if you unhide, it will unhide everything. Okay. Which is the same behavior in 4.2. So that hasn't changed. So good question, though. Good question. All right. So here, this is just being aware if we align in our export to Excel, align things to the left edge of our report and align things to the top and the bottom of our blocks here, then we don't get those extra rows. Okay. So on my aligning on here, I would want to make it 0 inches from the left edge of my report. And probably with this cell as well, there's advantages when you have a section here, but I would probably want to align it to say the bottom side of the customer state here, but make that 0 as well. So then I don't get an extra row there, and then also probably change this to 0 from the left edge of my report. Now, when I export this to Excel, you'd have to consider whether you want that extra space in there or not. If I didn't want that extra row dividing Florida from the California table, I could delete that as well, or align this to the bottom of that table. All right, and then everything would export nicely without those extra rows. Okay, so be aware of that. Use your relative positioning to align things so that you don't have to do cleanup to the Excel afterwards. That's a time saver on that end. Okay. This is an option here with your breaks. Let me show this. The table on the right here would be an example of just the normal break procedure. Here I have a break on the state and a break on customer city, and then showing the customers for within that break here. In this example here, just by adding some formatting in here and moving the totals into the break header instead of the break footer, it allows me to eliminate some of the rows there and have a more concise table. So you see, it's the exact same data, only more concise. And then I also just added spaces in here to get the indenting. Okay, so it's an option for you to get if like a more hierarchical view of your data. You could display it like that, and it gives you a more concise view of your data. All right. Let's see. Okay, so conditional formatting. I did mention, yes, you can not apply conditional formatting on multiple columns here. Let me go back to that bigger table here. If I try to apply the conditional formatting here, format, display, sorry, analyze formatting roles. If I say okay, yeah, I believe I can still only apply that at the individual column level. What is that? And the cell contents. Oh, it's because on this example that I have, we're applying it on, so we can apply conditional formatting on the column here. But what I wanted to show in this particular example was that we're using an input control to allow the user to define where they want that value to be at. Okay, so I could change this, say, only show it if it's 100,000 or greater, or less than 100,000 in this case. So that allows the users to define how they want to define the range for that by using an input control. If I, let's see.
Yeah, somebody just commented, Roxanne, but you just give it a name and then apply it to the other columns. So that seems fairly easy. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You just apply that to the other column. No, it's not applying. Duplicate. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I don't know why it's not picking up that formatting. It is, I don't know if it's because of the way that I particularly handled it in this by making it an input control. Because, oh yes, it would be, because this is using the cell contents as the range. So if you notice this, I said, show me the revenue less than the cell contents for this value, which is being run by my input control. Okay, so if I go back to my other example here, and we'll create a new rule. And say, I want to show my revenue. Greater than 100,000. And I'm going to format that as green. So I'll change the color to green. And okay, there's my high revenue. Of course. It's not applying at all. I wonder if, I noticed that it says it applies them in the order that they're displaying. What's interesting is that I didn't remember what that one was for. It's still not applying it. Well, there must be something I'm missing there. All right, let me, I'll come back to that. There's some other things I want to make sure we cover here. Oh, so in 4.2, I always used to recommend that you format the table first before you turn it into a chart. However, now we don't have to do that necessarily in 4.3 because of the cool panel that we have here. So for example, if I copy this table here, and then I'm going to paste it right next to here and turn this into a chart. So I'll turn it into a dual axis combined column line chart. Okay, so let's say this is my chart, and when I hover over it, I notice that I really don't want to display the decimals on the revenue and on my percentage. I also don't want to display the decimals. So now in 4.3, I can very easily change the formatting, not through the chart format options, but through my feeding panel here. So with this selected here, I can just come to my revenue right here and click on this and format the display right there and choose the example that I want. And now my revenue has the formatting that I want. The same with my percentage here. I can go to format display. The percentage only has that once, so I would have to add a custom, and I'll remove the 2 decimals there and say okay and okay. And now when I hover over the percentage, it's just showing the whole number, 9%, 12%. Okay, so I really love that about 4.3. You don't have to do that formatting ahead of time. Now in this case, notice my months here. I might want to format this. Let's say I want to have the short month name, and I'll add a formula on here and say, show me the left 3 of my order month on there. Notice also the options that I have in my formula editor here, that we have the colors on there. All right. Now, my page has timed out. Oh, that was actually probably the conditional formatting problem. Which I have experienced in the past as well. Whenever you have a tired browser, the conditional formatting misbehaves. Okay. Let me go back to my format chart here. Well, I lost my chart on there, but what I was going to do is I'll switch to design mode and just show how easy it is to, on my table here, I'm going to add that formula, show me my left. And then on my table here, I've got my short month names, which works better with my for a chart. But if I add my order month number in here, then I can get my sort to work more nicely by sorting on my order month number. Okay, so I'm going to select my table from the feeding panel. I'm going to make that my first column, and that will change automatically to sort left to right. I can turn this into a chart, and I'll choose that same chart. And now my months are sorting in the order that I want. And I can also hide that month name if I didn't want the month number to display in there. Okay, so I love that we can do so much in the charts here from our feeding panel. one other thing I wanted to show, I think it was on this one or the hierarchical one. Just notice from this table here, what the table information is being shown to us from the feeding panel, that there's a break applied to customer state, but it's hidden. And there's a break applied to customer city, but it's also hidden. All right. So all of that information I can see at a glance as the report designer and know that there's breaks applied. I can see the 2 breaks here and do any changes that I want to do to those breaks from here as well. But that feeding panel tells me exactly what's going on in that block of data. Okay, just a couple quick things now to mention.
Quick question that came in. What about 3D charts and animation?
Well, the animation we do have in the chart settings here. If you go to the document options, you can turn on chart animations. And it just adds a little bit of bounce. Where's my, this one has a chart. So that's the chart animation that they have on there. They don't, I don't know that they have added 3D charts on here. Well, there's a 3D column. There you go.
I think there's also a couple in those freemium need for viz charts that are coming with 4.2 SPO2 as well.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
All right. I think there was, you can change the style sheets as well. That you can still do in the document properties here as well by changing the default styles. Here you can export your CSS, make changes and import that in and apply that to other reports as well. So that is the same as 4.2, just in a different location. And then this I really wanted to bring up. There's really a lot of pre-formatting that should be done in the universe, okay? And I have some examples here. You can add multiple formats for your dates. So you could have it in month, day, year, or year, or just as the year. Add your short month dates, add your weeks, add month numbers, add sorts to your list of values. All of these things are things that should be done in the universe. Notice the year here. The report writer should not have to format the year every time to remove the comma in there. That should be done on the universe side. In this case, notice how the data has mixed case here. That could be fixed at the universe level so that the report writer doesn't have to fix that. Customer state, you could add a state abbreviation in here, which would make charting a lot easier. If your whole numbers should always have commas in there, format that measure in the universe so that it always has that in there. If you don't want it to have decimals, then format it in the universe so that it has that. And then you can format your dates to be a consistent length as well as DD, YY, and then it would add a 0 in there and they would all be consistently lined up. Okay, here's a good example. This one, it really bothers me. These numbers should have that comma in there by default. And the revenue, if your company doesn't usually display the decimals, then format that measure in the universe so that it doesn't have that. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is to have a report template that has some of this stuff set up for you ahead of time. We did some work for Presbyterian Health many years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And there were several of us that worked on the project, and we were so impressed with the report templates that they used consistently across their organization. And it made it so nice when we were migrating reports and comparing reports that there was so much consistency in the reports because they use these report templates. And they were kind enough to share their template. This is a PDF version of their template. And so they always had this cover page, and it showed their report owner, the department, and then the second page showed the goals, the environment. So if perhaps it was like this report is being developed in QA because we're waiting for some data, that kind of information was added here. Any report criteria and any notes that could be added to the report were there. Then they had this page with specific formulas, like this is how we're always going to define revenue or whatever measures were common within their organization. They would show that on here exactly how they were built. So there was no question in anyone's mind. They could look on this report tab and see that they were using the same formulas. Okay. And then these notes on here, these were super helpful when we were doing the migration to see, oh, I see that that report changed just recently. And now I know why the two reports don't match, because someone just made a change to this report. Okay. And then they had these templates. So here's a default horizontal table template. They put the red background and white font for their headers. Their totals were always in gray and variables in white. Here's a typical vertical table. Another example of a table here, and a crosstab. Their crosstab they used up there, and a default chart that they could use as well. They could quickly change this into a different type of chart, but the colors and everything like that were already set up for them. So it really saved a lot of time for them. So I would like to really recommend that to your organizations, to have a template that users could use to build reports and have some consistency across the organization. Really added so much value to the reports, and really made things so much easier. For the benefit of creating the template had years and years of benefits. Okay, that was the PDF version. They did have, of course, the Webi version that they used on here, and all they had to do is create their query and plug in to their horizontal table. And then they would usually, like if it was going to be a typical vertical table, they would delete these other tabs that didn't apply. Okay, but keeping the others. All right, that's the last thing that I wanted to mention.